Evening. Well, this is a subject that I'll try not to spend too long on tonight. It'll be something that I'd like to touch on some more, but it's a subject that I probably haven't fleshed out fully. And the one time I did try to make my thoughts public on this was in my men's yoga group, and they didn't really get what I was getting at, so forgive me if what I'm about to say is unclear, but it's on faith, religion, not necessarily religion. You can be faith in yourself, but what I found was last year I put myself through a little experiment. I'd been hearing from various different sources that like the way to live a good life is to live as though God is watching. You don't have to believe in God. It doesn't matter whether you believe in Him or not, but live as though there's someone watching. Like, don't engage in those behaviours that you would be embarrassed if someone found you watching, found you doing, So I decided to give myself a little bit of a experiment to live like a Christian does, and I grew up going to Catholic schools, but I never lived in a Catholic house, a Christian house. My own experience with God was, like going to school and drawing doodles on the back of books while they were talking about God and stuff. So it's not like I think I know the ins and outs, but I think there are some, pretty straightforward things that you probably shouldn't do if you want to call yourself a Christian. Lust, the 7 deadly sins, or, don't steal, don't, basically don't be a piece of shit. But, there's certain things you should do is, try and create a dialogue with God through prayer. So I was doing that, and the big thing for me is I've given up drinking. That was one of the things. Don't engage in too much on the internet. I feel like if God was around today, He would be telling you don't be spending all day on the internet, just because simply it's addictive behaviour, it's compulsive behaviour, and I think that's what He is getting at with, don't indulge in drugs, like destructive behaviours. So that was like basically the framework of this experiment. Anyway, one of my big things is lust, is like, not so much lust as in, let's be abstinent, stay away from, the opposite sex, not that as lusting over, girls on Instagram, lusting over that which you cannot physically put your hands on, don't lust over gold, don't lust over riches. So I started doing all these things that to me is the basis of a great Christian, and it lasted for a good 3 or 4 months. I think I was going pretty well. I wasn't watching pornography. I was keeping my internet usage pretty clean. I was doing that which I felt like I needed to do, which was exercise, eat well, just do everything that God would want me to do. And I'll tell you, 30 days, you feel good. 60 days, fucking phenomenal. By about 3 months, of getting around and doing that which is prescribed, more or less, like vaguely in the gospel, you just start standing. You feel like you're an inch taller and your chest is that much deeper, and your shoulders are that much wider, and you're not. You can look people in the eye, and you can. Not that I really feel like I'm a shattered little worm. Like I'm not that bad, but for instance, I sometimes have a stammering sort of problem when I speak to people, and I find a lot of that is to do with nerves and maybe not having the highest opinion of myself, because I probably didn't think of it at the time, but I quite often engage in that which does not make a man proud, whether it's foul language, whether it's pornography, whether it's lusting over women, whether it's spending all your fucking money because you're, impulsive and you don't have that impulse control. Like that beats you down, and that sort of puts you into this box. You want to make yourself smaller. But then, having gone through this experiment, I was suddenly, I was a man. Like not. I don't need to keep going over that, but like I was going on a trip to Korea, and I started talking to one of my favourite influencers. She's a fitness influencer, and we used to, talk back and forth in the DMs and all that sort of thing, And I had thought about, I was going to travel. I was going to Korea, and I thought, she seems to like to travel. What if I just put it out to her that I need a travel partner if you'd like to do it? Anyway, she said yes, and then we, arranged a time to call and organise this holiday. And in the meantime, I sort of had this moment of weakness where I was sort of going over her photos, and I think you can imagine what I did. And then all of a sudden, I've gone from this big, broad-shouldered man to this fucking golem, And then, when this time came around to have this phone call to organise this trip, it just came to be like, I don't think I should be doing this because, she made up an excuse. She was selling her house, and but I just, to me, it just felt like I went from, I was being smiled upon by God to I was smote by God. Smite, you know what I mean. Anyway, and I've just found, ever since then, I've found it hard since then to be able to maintain a streak of this brilliance, that I was experiencing when I was speaking to the man upstairs. And to me, I don't think it matters whether you believe in God. It's whether you act in a way that is prescribed in them Gospels. I think whoever wrote that, they knew about the human condition. They knew about the human psyche. They knew what maketh the man. So anyway, I'll sort of stammered on a little bit about that, but I think it's sort of said that men don't behave like men anymore, and I think the absence of God might have a little bit of something to do with that. And I don't mean, all right, I don't think we need to be running the crusades and hanging homosexuals, or I don't think we should be engaging in the violent part of what religion brought about. But I think we could certainly be keeping an eye on ourselves better and behaving better within ourselves to become the man that is within inside all of us, and the man who would make God proud. So that's my thoughts on that matter. I'd like to muse on that some more another time. That's okay. I'm about 10 minutes in, but I could probably add another little, thought to this. Is what I brought up to my friends at the time. Is I said, I think, you see a lot of successful people, whether they are sports stars, whether they are businessmen, whatever, they're successful people and they've made it to the top of their respective fields. They seem to be religious, whether it's, bashing you over the head with their pious nature or not. It doesn't, they have some sort of a faith-based mindset. And I think what I looked into was, or what I sort of discovered was, number one, I think faith is a human hack. If you have faith that if you behave in the way that God has prescribed, it's not too big of a leap for you to realize that if you just continue doing these little steps every day in the direction of your goals, you may not reach your goals, but good things are going to come to you. You just got to have faith that putting your one foot after the other is going to take you to the destination that God has prescribed to you, for want of better words. And once again, I don't know that I really believe in God itself, but I believe that it's a concept that it's a written law in the world. So that's my pondering for the day. I won't drag it out any longer because this is getting way too long. I'm going to have to start selling advertising if any of you actually listen to all this. So I put your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe if you like the way I'm putting that down. You might think I'm a stammering fool and I could stick God in my ass. That's up to you. But that's my thoughts on the matter. So today's a beautiful day to be alive. It's the 1st of October. Isn't that disgusting to think? 1st of October 2025. Have a beautiful day. Have a beautiful night wherever you are.